And I think I talked about this last class, but I just want to make sure before we even get into this, what is the most important thing you should do, you should have prepared before you walk into class on Wednesday?
Oh, the essay?
It's totally it. You should have a thesis. A thesis is a one-sentence answer to the question that needs to be proven. Your whole essay will be proving it. So it's a one-sentence answer, and you should have an outline. Now, you can't bring this in. You guys know that, right? But you should have it, and you should know it so well that when you come in, you know what you're going to write an outline for. Don't pre-write your essay. I mentioned this before. Horrible, horrible, horrible idea. It always screws up. Don't do that. Just know what you're going to write. Know what you're going to need in order to write that. So come up and collect whatever notes that fit into that outline so that you have it at your fingertips. And then you come in. You've got your thesis already. It's going to be, this is the one part that will be an absolute complete sentence. These probably shouldn't be complete sentences. You want to be able to write this down like 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. But the thesis should be in a complete sentence. It should have a because in it somewhere, right? So that's because that's what you're actually proving, and that's going to guide your essay. If you know what you're going to write, if you have your resources, you'll be fine. And so if you have any questions, what should you do between now and come see me, right? I have no problem with you bringing in an outline and asking me, well, what do you think about that? No problem at all, right? I won't give you an answer like, this is how you should write your essay, but I will ask you questions that will help you to know how to write your essay. So any worries at all, come see what we're going to do today, 1920s, and then the prep. Before we start on the 1920s, I just want to remind you or ask you, what is our essay question? I mentioned it in class once or twice, maybe 100 times. Go ahead.
What best defines progressivism between the period of like 1900 and 1930?
This is like a duplicate for your first exam. The first exam was asking about industrialization and which of these areas most or best manifested or expressed that industrialization. Well, I'm going to have the exact same question, but instead of industrialization, we're later, right? 1920, bless you, 1930. And the question is, which of these areas most or best illustrates, expresses, shows progressivism? So clearly, you have to be able to understand what progressivism is. Remember, we spent a whole day right at the beginning of the unit just talking about progressivism. You have to understand what it is, and then you have to look at all the things that it might be manifested as. You guys understand what manifest means? Manifest is to kind of reveal itself, right? Manifested as. There's 5 options. And so you're going to find out which of these best reflects progressivism. You have to talk about the other ones, but one of them we're going to talk about most. So we see faith in progress before the war. Beginning around 1900, remember, Theodore Roosevelt, the progressives, these guys are all big on it. Wilson in 1912 calls himself a progressive. Taft calls himself a progressive. They all have totally different views, but they all believe that no matter what path we take, we can make it better. Then we have the war itself. And I mentioned how this could certainly be seen as an example of a tremendous faith in progress. And now lastly, we have the 1920s. And even though we have one element for reform and one element that seems to be nihilism, which side is really winning? And what does that represent? Can you see faith in progress before, during, and after the war? Yeah. Yes. How is it most represented? I am so glad you asked that, because that happens to be a familiar question to me. You guys have seen this? You may have been wise enough to print it out early. You look at this question, and it will say pretty much the exact same question that I just asked you. So let me look over the back. This is what it says. I'll just read it. The United States experienced significant changes in the 3 decades between 1900 and 1930. Yes, that's about as obvious as you can get. In many areas, these changes were largely influenced by progressive idealism, both before and after World War I. In areas of domestic and foreign policies, economy, technology, popular culture. Remember, this is a little bit different than the first exam because these aren't specific groups. These are kind of topics. What is domestic policy?
Here on.
Everything here. When you're looking at the progressives and urban progressives, urban politicians, it's all domestic. When you look at prohibition, that's a form of a domestic policy. Foreign, what is foreign policy?
Like our issue with Europe.
Outside. So, Spanish-American War, we talked about that, right? We talked about dollar diplomacy, or at least it was on the thing. We talked about before we got into World War I, and then getting into World War I, and then right after. Remember that term? You guys don't remember it, but it's called unilateralism. Why didn't we go back to isolationism after World War I? What's the difference between diplomatic isolationism and unilateralism? Isolationism. Okay. Can anyone tell me? Diplomatic isolationism has how much faith in our ability to handle the rest of the world?
0.
0. Unilateralism represents how much faith in our ability to handle the rest of the world? A lot more, because unilateralism means we are going to be involved and we're going to get into doing things. We're not going to join the League of Nations, so we're not part of the global government structure. We're not going to do that, but we're going to do it on our own, which is a progressive illustration. So we look here, we can see in the areas of domestic and foreign policies. Economics. What was the economy during this area? How does economics reflect progressivism?
Our economy is booming. We're doing good. If it's failing,
Why does it do well when it's booming?
because people have money, they're spending it, they're having more products be made, and
I didn't spend a lot of time on this. I'll talk about this much more in the next unit. But what is the stock market? That's when you buy pieces of company, shares of company, pieces of company. If you think the economy is doing well, and if you think these companies are going to grow, do you want to buy the piece of them? Yes. What if you think that the economy is going to tank, and these companies are all going to fail? Do you want to buy them? You sell them. So when you have a stock market crash, it has to do with a loss of faith. But what happens if you have a stock market boom? Great deal of faith. I'll leave it there. And popular culture. Given all the information you have available to you, your textbooks, your in-class lectures, your PowerPoint slides, everything in the world, except the internet. Don't get on the internet. Which area of change are the 5 listed above? Domestic policies, foreign policies, economics, technology, popular culture. Popular culture, by the way. Radio, movies, cars, baseball, sports. These all were booming. They didn't have a down period. Which area of the 5 listed above most reflected the ideals of progressivism? Please provide specific examples from before, during, and after World War I. Anyone have any questions as to what this requires? And at the very beginning of class I mentioned, what do you need to do before Wednesday?
outline.
You must have an outline. You should have a thesis which gives a 1-sentence answer that needs to be explained, includes a because in there, because it's that because that you're actually proving. You should have some outline, which is the story that you're going to use. You should have parts to that story and subparts, right? You should know this. You cannot bring your outline in, but you should know it so well that you don't need to bring it in. You bring it in, you come in, immediately you just write it down on a sheet of paper, you're good to go. Questions, comments, words of wisdom? You guys are good to go. We will see you. Okay, we'll see you guys later. Good luck. Have fun. And I want to